something I want to say before we get started is so I went back and listened to the Goblin one, and I found out that the audio is doubled. I messed up something during recording, so I'm going to put that on private the second this one goes up on YouTube. So if anyone wants to download it for some reason, they can. Yeah.
Did you change the name on Twitch to Changelings?
I don't think I did.
Okay, cool.
Oh well, I can go back and change it later.
Yeah. Tweet. Just made sure that we are live. Tweet went out.
Cool.
And then I'll send it out
on. Sorry. All right, so like I was kind of explaining to Colleen and Ethan before we started, so the Changeling aren't gonna have they're not gonna have like a place where they live like collectively, because obviously I kind of want them to be kind of separate, but like they still have some sort of like cultural stuff. I kind of want to draw inspiration from, like old, actual real world folklore, and kind of combine it with like how the synths are treated in Fallout 4, which to my knowledge, I mean, well, I guess we might find out that's exactly how normal changelings are going to be viewed anyway, based off of folklore. So,
well, from what I know about changelings in folklore, they are they are a type of fae that are, and this is specifically the Irish changeling. They're a subset of like fairy, and they will be left in like place of a baby. There's like two types of changelings. There's the stock changeling, which is actually just like a piece of like wood or something, which will be left in place of a baby, or a person. And then there's the fairy version, which is like when they trade one of their own for a person. And and the reason why people would act differently is because changelings didn't thrive in the human world. And so they would just slowly start to deteriorate.
mm-hmm.
Um, or it would be like literally a piece of wood. And so
From the base amount of research I did, there was like things like changelings had like a voracious appetite, like they would just eat and eat and eat. They would either eat a ton or they would hardly eat anything at all.
yeah. So if we want to go, do you guys want to get into sad territory real fast?
Sure.
So changeling lore kind of presented itself because back in the day, people didn't really understand mental illness, or they also did not understand neurodivergent things like autism.
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially with autism, the thing like the changeling baby, autism didn't really present itself in children until like age 2. And so when a kid started presenting signs of like autism when they were 2, and they were like a otherwise fairly regular baby up until that point,
Mm-hmm.
the mother would be like, obviously this is a fairy baby now, and my kid got taken away, because they didn't know what autism was.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's why changeling folklore got started. It was invented as a way to explain that kind of thing away. And also like in seniors, like when things like dementia started, they'd be like, this is obviously a changeling now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so folklore is sad.
Yay.
Yay.
I mean, it's just really interesting, like what people came up with to explain certain things back in the day, like dinosaur bones being dragons, elephant skulls are cyclopses because of the big hole that was for the trunk. Stuff like that is super interesting, and yeah, it gets dark and sad like that does, but it's just very interesting to see what early, what people would think of certain things since they didn't have the technology or the medical knowledge. It's super interesting. Like well, obviously we'll go into this at some other point, but vampirism is really interesting on how that got started.
Yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, changelings.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yes.
So you said so earlier you said something about Fallout, and I'm going to have to check in my nerd card here and just slide that over because I haven't actually really played any of the Fallout games,
It's
so
all
I
good. I
don't
mean,
reference.
like, to be fair, I didn't. This one I feel like I'm gonna get a bunch of rage for it. I didn't like Fallout 3 in New Vegas, which I know a lot of people really love, but I really liked Fallout 4, so it's okay.
The synth are synthesized humans. They're like cyborgs / robots, and they're kind of second class citizens. And they disguise themselves as humans. Well, some disguise themselves as humans.
Kind of.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it is a lot like that. But so since we're originally created by the organization, my brain died. It's just dead. It just went. Like I had the organization name in there and it just went. Um, um, oh God, the Institute. They were made by the Institute. So that way they have like Ethan said, they view synths as robots, even though they are technically like you could classify them as like people because they have emotions and free will and thought and stuff like that. Even though the Institute treats them as robots. And the thing is about like synths, just to kind of go into that for a bit. They are basically in. Oh God, I hear echo on myself.
Hear echo, yeah.
Beep. All right. They are basically indistinguishable from humans. Like there's no medical test you can do. There's no like not really a psychological test you can do. The only signs you could tell is if you killed them and took a thing out like that's called the synth component out of their brain, or another thing is synths if they will never gain weight no matter how much sugar and stuff they eat. They also never age, which obviously we're not taking that last one into account for the changelings. But yeah, like they're completely indistinguishable, and some of them like leave the institute and like try to forge their own life, but some of them get switched out with other people so the institute can do experiments or just kind of spy on what's going on with the Commonwealth. So when I did that like little cursory study about changelings, and I was like, it was like they switched them out. I was like, oh, that's immediately made me think of synths. So yeah.
So do you want to do somebody made them?
I think that'd be really interesting.
Would they? Well, are they of like Fey ancestry in this world, or are they not?
I mean, we could still do.
Didn't they come from Ebron? They didn't get introduced to D&D until the Ebron expansion.
Yeah, and I mean, because the reason I actually did a little research on that too. So the reason that changelings were invented for Eberron is because the original creator of the Eberron world wanted to originally make doppelgangers a playable race, but when he did he started looking at the doppelganger monster, he was like, oh, they have too many powers and they're too powerful to be playable races. So that's when he made the changeling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if doppelgangers are Fey or not. I don't know what classification they fall under.
So, a fun fact about the doppelganger, like the actual lore behind a doppelganger, is that a doppelganger is like a ghost that you see like in real life while you're still. It's when you see, or somebody else sees like a vision of you, while you're still alive, and it's an omen of death. It means that you're about to die.
That's
Especially
terrifying.
if you see yourself. Yeah, it's pretty scary. I think it's rumored that Edgar Allan Poe saw one before he died, like shortly before he died. It literally means like double person in German, if I remember correctly.
That makes
Um,
sense.
but yeah, it's like seeing a ghost of someone who is still alive.
That's
So
terrifying. So I just looked it up. So doppelgangers are considered monstrosities, but I mean, we could still consider
that
changeling
makes
fae,
sense.
I
Well,
would
yeah,
say.
changeling, like
Because,
doppelganger would definitely be a monstrosity, but like considering the origin of a changeling, that feels
yeah.
different. That feels big.
Well, especially because, like,
Fae
the
are,
Feywild's crazy, right? Like, things just fucking shit goes on all the time in the Feywild, and there's random crazy ass shit that forms out of that. Like the
yeah.
Eladrin as an example. The Eladrin, like they technically have like a weird form of shape changing, because they can change their season. Like over a
Mm-hmm.
long rest, they can just change what season they are.
Yeah.
Um, so like they already just innately have a minor, you know, shape shifting like ability. So it wouldn't surprise me if changelings came out of the Feywild.
Yeah. And also, I think it's um the Fearbolg they can cast disguise self as a racial ability like once a
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
day.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of that going on with Fae races.
Mm-hmm. Um. So yeah, we definitely would be able to make them Fey. I feel. And I don't know if this is like a thing that like in actual Eberron stuff because I didn't look at the description of like what they look like
That's why I
for
just
Eberron.
posted. Well, no, not how they look. I just
Oh.
posted a lore bit from
Mm-hmm.
on Changelings in the chat.
Cool. I will read that in a bit. Um, but like I love the way just Taz looks in our West Marches, like completely white skin with kind of silvery
That's how
hair.
they look.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Then
Yeah.
I think we'll keep that because I just really really like that. I just like all the art that gets made of Taz.
Yeah. She's so aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. So I guess I'll put the way they look under way people dress technically. It's not like they dress, but it's the way they
Base
look.
form.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
their default form, I guess. In D&D lore, apparently, like when a changeling dies, it reverts back to its default form. I don't know if we wanted to keep that or not.
I like it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty.
The base form has pure white hair. No, pure white skin. Sorry. What? Should they look more different? Obviously, other than having just pure white skin and silver hair. Is there anything else that I just don't know?
Their eyes are completely white too.
Okay. God, that'd be terrifying to see.
Yeah, they're a little bit unsettling.
The ones that I've seen, not the ones that I've seen, like some of the art that I've seen, they don't have like mouth or nose in their base form.
I say let's keep the mouth, but let's get rid of the nose.
This could be Lord Voldemort.
Yes. Well, I mean, Voldemort has nostrils still. If the changelings probably wouldn't have nostrils at all. Pull a Krillin over here.
Sorry.
It's all good. I would say their dress is entirely dependent on where they were raised and like the persona that they're taking on. So they
Yeah,
wouldn't
because
have.
like I know that like rule-wise, whenever they shapeshift, they have to stay within their size category and they have to keep the same number of limbs. But other than that, like they they stay there in their clothes. It's not like disguise self, but they do physically shape shift into whatever they're going as.
Mm-hmm.
But they they have to keep a lot of like different clothes on them to match
Mhm.
that.
I don't know. I just that makes me giggle like thinking about Taz because like so we said like Taz just kind of wanders around his different personas every once in a while to kind of listen on what's going on. Just I just imagine like walking into a room and just has like like a huge fucking like side of the wall is just one gigantic like basically open closet of just different costumes. She's like, I'm doing this one today.
Only knows disguise self for her clothes.
Yeah.
Everybody has one outfit missing from their closet. No one has noticed.
Um, so I'm getting echo. So you don't want them to have like a country or anything like that.
No.
Um, we want them to be in the Fae, and it's not like the Tortle where like, because if I remember correctly, with the Tortle, they kind of just lived in other cities, and there would be like, this is the part of the city where the Tortles were at.
No, I think turtles have their own place. I think it was. Oh God, we did do one of those. One of the races we did, they don't really have their own. I mean, I think what we did was Tabaxi, but even then, Tabaxi had like a couple places that they would stay on their own. Um, I think this will be one of the. I think this will be the first race where there's literally no, like, city states of just changelings. So I think this will be the first race where there's no city states of that race. So this will be an interesting challenge
Is it
for
because
us.
people distrust them, or
I would say so. I mean, like, something that transforms and you don't know what it entirely looks like and it can just change at will. I would say is very, for like an average person, is difficult to trust or kind of know what the devil is going on with it.
I think I've got something.
All right.
So, what is the cataclysm? Is that what you call it?
The Catasandra.
Catasandra, sorry.
So good.
What if the chain? So, if you read the story, it's about a woman who has 100 children, and she has people that are coming to kill her, and she goes to the Traveler, or the Traveler comes to her, is like, "I can protect your children," and turns her 100 children into changelings,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how they were made. So, what if at the point where somebody was standing right at the point where it all happened,
Mm-hmm.
where like the Big Bang, like the center of the Big Bang, somebody was standing there, and I'll call it magic, like the energy, whatever you want to have, you from two worlds colliding together, turned this person into a changeling, and that's how.
That'd be interesting because that would mean that the changelings haven't been around for that long.
Mhm.
That's very
how long
interesting.
ago was your cataclysmic event?
700 years ago.
Okay.
I did not realize it was that short ago.
Yeah, no,
Puts a lot of things in what? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
No, it hasn't been terribly too long. It's like obviously it's been a few generations for like humans, but for like there's probably still elves around that remember times before that. There's
like only a generation or two for dwarves.
Mm-hmm. Like yeah, it has not been terribly too long.
Did not know that.
Mm-hmm. But I like that. I like it a lot. We're gonna do it.
I thought that was something you would like.
Yeah, I like that. So I'm just putting this in here because I don't know where else it's gonna go right now.
Isn't that like lore, history?
Well, there's no like history section.
Yeah, there is down underneath literature, or in the literature.
Oh, yeah, I suppose, yeah. Yeah. So I guess...
You could even do like a village, so that way we can explain that like yeah, do a village. So that way there's people. There was
There's a way to propagate the race.
Mm-hmm.
and then as they're being ostracized, they run to the Fae, and that has even more effects on them.
Are each of these under here their own heading, like morals, values, teach, lessons?
I have... So those right now, those were just, those were there just to kind of show what should go in that section. I don't know if 100% they would have their own headers, but, I mean, we've never actually really put
like the
too much
goals
stuff
of what,
in the literature before, so...
Yeah, every one that I've done hasn't, like, all the stories have been like verbal, and they've been like in the cult.
Right?
Yeah, they've been in like the religion section.
Mm-hmm.
Because then there's art and literature up here, and then it's just literature down here.
Is that how you spell it? Aha! Spelled it right.
Should they forever change to denizens?
No, I mean, that's supposed to be the...
Oh. Okay. It's like, I don't get that. Well...
There we go. Because born implies like
yeah, I was about to ask,
thing.
but I was picturing like the first generation of babies after the Catasandra like were changelings from that village. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but saying made implies that like that occurrence changed those people. Oh, that's why they're called changelings. Other than the fact that they can change themselves, they also were changed. That's interesting. Uh-huh.
Baby. Come here, bud. I made the mistake of letting Toby down, and now I'm never gonna come back.
Oh no, sad panda. There's Richard right there.
Cooper's just chilling in his kennel taking a nap.
Oh. As well as fact that a
So, my big question then, because now I'm seeing a lot of ties between the changelings and your Azamar, as far as like not being trusted and being ostracized.
Well, I think
so now
the main difference between the Azamar and the changelings is the changelings I feel are more like feared, as opposed to the Azamars are more just outright hated.
Yeah, the changeling. Oh, sorry. The changelings are like this sense of like other, because there's this sense of like, are you a changeling? Are you a changeling? What
Oh,
about you? You could
so-
be a changeling.
Yeah, but I'll
And
put it. Sorry, were you done?
oh, I mean, like the Azamar, everyone thinks of them as like this scum. Like they're the ones who like history is written by the victors, and the Azamar are like the blamed for all this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But so then my question is, if what's the difference going to be between if you we find out crazy old Jimmy that lives behind the well is a changeling versus if we find out crazy old Jimmy that lived behind the well was an Azamar? What's going to be the difference?
I think
Because even being feared and being hated, like in my mind, the reaction from a small little town or from people is probably going to be very similar.
Well, I mean, Tara's a tiefling, and they still tried to burn her and her mom for.
I think that had more to do with the magic than the fact that they were tieflings.
Yeah, but still, like, they were magic users, and
It's also
when people lash out and they're afraid.
yeah,
And
for so many demons.
Mhm.
But like that's still so. My question still is how are people going to react to find like if they saw a changeling in its true form, how are they going to react? What like if you want them to be ostracized and is it a self-imposed ostracization? Do they not feel accepted and it's more so just how they feel than people actually, because you don't just get ostracized. That's what's the reasoning for them, and if it's fear, like it's still really close to me, and I think the difference needs to be figured out.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
yeah, I mean, I guess we know why the Azamars are hated. So, like, I guess I agree that we should figure out what was the sort of catalyst that sparked mass fear, if there is mass fear about the changelings.
Mm-hmm.
And,
But like, I don't think that there necessarily needs to be a difference in reaction to those things, because people gonna be.
well, that's kind of yes, we're saying the same thing. I might have not just said it that way.
You got another one, mysterious old lady.
What was I going to say?
Um,
Because if you look at the picture of them on their race, like on D&D Beyond, that's a creepy picture. They don't look like as pretty as Taz looks in lore. And I like the idea of like you could be a changeling. You could be a changeling. Like that's really cool.
Well, I mean, we could pull from some inspiration from Fallout 4 again. Because there's an event that happened in Diamond City where like this guy came in to town and was eating at this kind of like this noodle shop they have in the middle of Diamond City, and he went crazy and he shot and killed the owner and started like killing civilians, and it took like basically the entire police force of Diamond City to take him down, and when they took him down they found out he was a synth. So like maybe like maybe there was a group of changelings that kind of went like insane, like something happened where they started just attacking people, and then when they were finally taken down,
like the earlier generations were kind of messed up from being changed so drastically by magic.
Yeah, some of the earlier ones the such sudden change kind of caused some of them to snap, like their just mental state to snap, and so then they just kind of went on a.
You said that two universes collided together.
Mm-hmm.
What if the reason why they snapped is because they saw them like they basically saw them overlaying on top of each other instead of the combined result?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like in this weird kind of in between place. Like, they're still there, but like their
Mhm.
brains were kind of in this weird
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
shaky.
kind of pulling from a like a Lovecraftian type thing, where like the immensity and
Like,
the immensity of the situation and the universe going beyond their scope that they could ever comprehend, like causes them to
yeah,
go insane, or at
like
least a good group of
imagine
them.
how, you know, those old 3D stuff with the one red and the one blue glasses,
Mm-hmm.
and how you, when you took those off, you saw the two images super like separated,
Mm-hmm.
almost like they were seeing that without what it looked like when you put the glasses on.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're just like walking around, everything's just like shaky and like doubled and freaking out. And
Mm-hmm.
So, working off of what we have with the village, and working off of trying to set this sense of unease and a sense of fear in the world about changelings because of these changelings that kind of went mad. What if we change it from a village to just people throughout the whole worlds,
Ooh,
both worlds, like, because if it's a village, it would take time for them to spread throughout the
that's true.
world.
That's true.
So if it just happened to people around, they just kind of appeared, and it was an effect of the Catasandra.
Okay.
And some of them went a little mad from the change and seeing things. For our origin story for this race. How long do they live for? Do they live like a
I
normal
think human
Um,
lifespans.
human
I
lifespan?
think they live a little bit under humans.
I'm checking right now. What the books say.
They live for a century or less.
Yeah.
So
They
like,
mature
yeah, so
slightly faster than humans, though.
okay. When the Catasandra
Toby,
happened-
don't chew on that. That's your blanket. It's your friend.
Man, that's a shame that they only live like a century. I just got a cool idea of a change, like a changeling, like if changelings were long lived, of like some of them remembering this happening, and like I think it's cool. Got a cool story in my head.
Mm-hmm. There's universe time together cause the affected to damn it, I got it wrong.
How do you think we tie this to the Fae, Colleen? Because I know that was something that I think both of you wanted to do. So, if you got anything,
It could be that it could be that the Fae is sort of, or the Feywild is like their shelter.
that's what
Maybe
they.
Fae-aligned creatures are the only ones who are willing to trust them. Like, because their own magic is so wild that they sort of like adopted them as their own.
Mhm. Where is the Feywild? Like, I know it's a place, but it's always one of those things where I'm like, how do you get to the Feywild?
Let me see. I don't know.
It's over by the Elephant Graveyard, and we just don't go to the Feywild. Like,
I'm sorry, what was the question? I was thinking of the thing I was typing.
Because, like, if we want them to find the way, like, for your world, where is the Fae?
So the Feywild is kind of like, so like the Shadowfell and the Feywild are very similar in the fact that the Shadowfell is basically like,
It's like a plane, and then, right?
It's like it says a parallel plane to the
Yeah.
prime.
yeah, so like they're both
So-
parallel planes where things are very similar but different at the same time. Where like the Shadowfell is very like shadowy and dark and is corrupted by like shadows. The Feywild is like overgrown with forests and other types of nature, because
But it's one of those. Is it one of those things like, from my understanding, because there are kind of places like where you can accidentally stumble into the Feywild, the Shadowfell, Barovia, these parallel planes to the material planes.
Mhm.
So
Oh, I know where because there's one in Marigot. There's a way you can accidentally get to the Feywild in Marigot somewhere.
Nice.
I know where it is.
I don't know where Marigo's at. Oh no, Marigo's the continent. we're
Marigot is
on.
the continent that you guys
Okay.
are.
Well, that's what, like, did they feel drawn to the Feywild? Did creatures of the Feywild find them and bring them to the Feywild, and then they've kind of come back out? If we're trying to involve the Feywild,
Mm.
because I like the idea, I definitely think it's a good place for them.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I'm just trying to figure out how they would get there, or maybe it's still a process. I don't know.
Did some of them, when the Catasandra happened, did some of them find themselves on the material, or find themselves in the Feywild? Did some of them find themselves in the Shadowfell,
Maybe
and they found their way back, and then went?
idea.
Yeah, we're told.
One second. So, with this statement,
Mm-hmm.
With how this statement reads right now,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just picturing a base form changeling going on a mass killing spree. And you don't really. So if it just includes a bit about taking a different appearance, going on a killing spree, and then it's killed and it reverts back to its base form,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of sets up this fear we want. Because if this gray Lord Voldemort looking person is. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I wasn't.
No,
Gonna,
I saw
just want,
Colleen go like
oh,
this.
I'm just gonna say I just want to get that thought out first
Yeah.
before I went back and fixed the way I needed it to be. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, go on.
But go ahead, Colleen.
What if I just thought of werewolves because you guys said killing spree, like mass killing spree?
Mm-hmm.
So, what if they were in control until there was like something I don't know if there's like any sort of magical surges related to the Catashtala?
Cassandra.
Cassandra.
Cassandra that would prompt this, but like what if the first changelings reacted to some sort of cycle that caused them to have moments like that? They weren't just like that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that made them kind of unpredictable. Like, and then they would kind of they were normal, they looked normal because they would shapeshift, maybe even shapeshift back into what they looked like before,
Mm-hmm.
and they would hide. And then once they got hit with that wave of like, oh my god, like everything around me looks crazy now, and it made their eggs get scrambled,
Mm-hmm.
that's when they would revert to their true changeling form and just start like freaking out. Not necessarily trying to kill things or kill people, but just kind of, you know, feeling everything is out to get me. I will defend myself at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
Backed into a corner.
I've been picturing like Blade Runner this entire time since we started them, and you started talking about Sith, and my mind went to Blade Runner. Have you guys seen Blade Runner?
I've seen both movies. Yes.
Have you seen it, Colleen?
Maybe is that the one?
The new one had Ryan Gosling and Batista.
I haven't seen the new one, but is
the old one has Harrison
one?
Ford.
I mean, they both have Harrison Ford.
I've seen the old
Both have
one,
Harrison.
I think.
So I'm picturing more of like unhinged than mad, like more serial killer-esque than like going around as whatever person and then just seeing something and be like, you know, that I want that person now, and like killing the person and just kind of like inserting themselves into their life, but they're unhinged, so something's off, and eventually like getting caught and getting killed and reverting back into the base form. That's where my mind is. That's where I'm at with it.
Okay, so I like that.
So
I just watched Mindhunter. Yeah, I just watched Mindhunter too. So good.
when did cuz like in the official lore it says that despite common fears few changelings embrace evil, like
Yeah.
Are we going with that, or are we going with changelings tread towards evil?
No, I say we'll probably go with what's written in lore. I'm just because right now we're just trying to figure out why people don't trust them.
Yeah.
So my thought process is like, not like it's like I was a very few amount. Like it wasn't like a big group. It was like a very few amount where stayed behind in the material plane, and you know, like
enough to get
enough
start.
to do that, and then like maybe like 100 years later or something like that, the changelings who were pushed into the Feywild started making their way back into common society. So there's probably very few of them, you know, within the material plane as it is. They're probably very, very rare to come across. They're probably not that common. I would say they're like super, super rare.
Oh, okay.
But people still remember that.
Yeah.
Obviously.
It was enough to make this like folklore.
Yeah.
Enough to make this myth.
Yeah. It wasn't like it wasn't like, oh my god, there's changelings everywhere. It was like, oh my god, it feels like there's changelings everywhere. Are you a changeling? Like that.
Yeah, like mass hysteria is just like a hell of a drug.
Yep.
So the ones in the Feywild are the ones that are... Do
The
the ones in the Feywild shapeshift?
Yeah,
much?
they still shapeshift. I would say that all of them learn how to shapeshift. It's just I feel like the weirdness of the Feywild like caused them to like kind of get a grip on reality a little easier, you know, because Feywild's already kind of fucking crazy as it is. So like, you know, kind of like being thrust into that and being like, okay, so we're here now and we kind of see this crazy stuff. It's more of like it was more of a kind of like a slow like integration of fucking crazy as opposed to like now I see both worlds combined together at once and this is really fucking weird.
Mm-hmm.
Here I'm gonna put that. I don't know where that original came from. Maybe I typed it out for initial thought and then I didn't like it anymore. Now existed, they both you could see both universes overlapped with one another. However, if they saw someone that they
So, to get Colleen and Guy thinking, the ones in the Feywild, are they just like Master Yodaing it for the most part? Like Master Yoda and Shrek, they just live by themselves spread throughout the Feywild, and sometimes they'll run into each other. Are there cities in the Feywild? Large gatherings of creatures that may or may not resemble civilization.
Kind of. There are some every once in a while. There's not like a ton, though. I would say.
I know there's like an auditorium. I think.
I
might be mixing that up with Mercer lore.
No, I think that's Mercer lore, but I mean it's possible. I don't. To be fair, I don't know a lot about like actual D&D Feywild lore. I just kind of know what I've seen from everybody else's games and books and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know Feywild.
So as far as like what happened to the ones in the Feywild, I feel like they would try to retain some semblance of the culture they had before, but if this happened to more than just humans, then they probably have a gigantic mishmash of cultures.
Yeah.
So it's like a fucking quilt. If that, you know.
No, I'm 100% seeing exactly, like, yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, they'd probably be in these like little pockets of like little nomadic clans and just move around.
Just move around the Feywild.
Yeah, and they'd have a bunch of weird traditions from each of the other cultures that they came from, and that have mutated and passed down through time. Honestly, Changeling might be the best one to work on at the very end when all the other ones are done.
That's fair. So like at least with this episode, we can try to get where they came from. I feel at least.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I agree. Coming back to them when like at least a good chunk more are done.
Yeah, we
Makes
could
a
at
lot of
least
sense.
decide on like which races they came from.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly.
Let's pull up the races, dog. Do we want to?
Others tried to.
One of my favorite things to do with cultures is, especially when they diverge, is to take where they were at that point in time, separate them, and then take how this one evolved over here and then evolve this one completely differently so that you can still see the end result from like you can still see how they're loosely related, but then you can clearly see like how they yoinked apart.
I think if we just take all the PHB races and exclude the monster. So if we take the PHB, we don't include half orcs, and like
Well, of course we wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
That's oh my god, that'd be interesting. What would happen if a changeling and an orc bred? What would come from that? Because changelings, I feel they would either I feel because like I did do like I said, I did do a little research. I didn't do a butt ton. But from a little bit that I remember about like D&D changeling is like is a 50-50 chance of it being a changeling or whatever the other race is. But like seeing as orcs biology completely takes over the DNA of the thing of like the other of the baby basically and turns it into a half orc. What would come from that? It would be a complete like fight over.
focusing back around before we tangent too far.
Sorry, go on.
No.
Well, I mean, it would just be like a half orc that got turned into a changeling, right? Like, so basically, the collision happened. The zippy zap happened all around the world to all these different things that were other races, and then got zapped into changelings, and then the changelings got pushed into the Feywild, right?
Mm-hmm.
You two are talking about two different things right now.
I know, but that's
Yeah.
what I was saying. Like, basically,
Because
like,
the half orcs don't really have their own culture.
oh, they don't.
No, and they can't. In Adam's
okay.
world, they can't. In Adam's world, a mixed blood can't procreate.
Except for half orcs.
I thought you. So that's changed since we talked about it.
Half orcs are the only exception. Every other like half breed can't.
Okay.
If those half breeds can't exist, they can't procreate themselves. The only exception is half orcs, but that's just because of the biology of orcs to begin with.
Okay. Point still being that their culture is either whichever one they're raised by.
Mm.
I'm sorry, my tangent got us all confused.
No, you're good.
PHP races, Azamar don't really have their own culture because they're so busy running around.
Mm-hmm.
Tieflings
Tieflings don't really have their own culture.
don't
either.
have their. Yep. The turtle culture, it's possible, and I don't know a whole lot about the Yanti and your Dragonborn and Tabaxi to be like they shouldn't make it in.
Well, I mean, so Dragonborn are, so they're very
They have their own
community
country.
driven.
But I'm saying it to just not for a recap of it, but to be like a Dragonborn, if it was turned into a changeling, would have its own culture to bring to this, like for the purpose of writing this down, so we can be like, these are the races that we want to draw from.
I mean, we can just draw from like we just pick races, and then we can kind of like pick like their cultural significance and like, practices later.
No, that's what I'm. Never mind.
Okay, I see what you're saying now. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's my fault. My bad.
Uh, so we have the story of how they got. We realized we need to come back to them.
Yeah.
We just want to call it there then.
Let me write out like in their like daily life or their customs that they, since they don't have a custom of their own, they kind of like obviously that they take the customs from the different races.
Whatever
that
their
they turn
tribe
into.
is made up of.
Yeah.
So
So
each tribe is very different.
I feel like
I'll write that down so we don't forget when we come back.
Yeah, they're at least the ones in the Feywild. Yeah, each. Do we want to maybe make 3 major tribes, and then that way it'll be easiest to
Like 3 or 4 to split it up and design. Yeah.
to split it up in design? Yeah.
I agree.
That way we can put we can just divide the races into
Yep.
those 3 or 4 groups, and just it won't be a gigantic.
Mm-hmm.
A little easier to manage. Can give them little like sub names or something. Little clan names.
I definitely want like a group of like small size changelings, because they obviously changelings can't change what size category they are. But I think it'd be really funny for like a very small group of like small changelings.
Sweet. I think that is a good stopping point.
I agree. I believe this is a good stopping point for changelings, seeing as we realized, like you said, Ethan, we realized that we need to come back to this.
That was Colleen.
Well, both. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, yes, Colleen. Yes, Colleen was the one who said that initially. You're right. My bad. But yeah, I think this is a good place to stop for right now. We definitely like I like where this is. I like where this is headed. Because like Ethan, like you said when we started making Wood Elves, this gives players an interesting thing to latch on to make a character.
Mm-hmm.
Which I feel like Changeling will bring a lot to the table for players that want to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I want to say thank you everybody for coming along and enjoying this little culture build with us. Hope all of you have a wonderful day, and I love every single one of you. Bye.